Welcome to Decision Space, the only show to take place right here in the space between the turns in your favorite games. I'm Phil Walker Harding,
I'm Paul Solomon.
and this is the podcast about decisions in games.
And today, of course, we are joined, as you can tell, by Hall of Fame from Board Game Overboard, Meeple Overboard podcast, the legendary Phil Walker Harding, one of my design icons. Phil, thank you for joining us today.
It's good to be here.
All the way from Sydney, Australia. You are actually in the future. It's Wednesday for me, it's Thursday for you. Pleasure to be talking to you. And we're going to dig straight in. I've put together a whole pile of questions here. We'll see how much we get to. And a little bit of background for you. We just did a 2-hour episode, me and Chris Yee from the Dice Tower, going over basically every game you've ever made and creating a tier list. So we
Jeez.
have our listeners will have a pretty broad knowledge of your oeuvre, including
Wow.
things you did at Adventureland games that no one has ever touched, like the Shuffling the Deck game or Cannonball Island. Is that what that one's called?
No, unfortunately, it's called Cannonball Colony.
Cannonball Colony, yes. It's sort of a tragedy there. But let's get right into it. My first question, we'll sort of skip the part of like, did you play games as a child? And the question I want to ask is sort of like, when did you realize that games were something else sort of beyond the things that you played as a kid? For me, it was like I played Diplomacy and I got so hooked. And then I played Ticket to Ride and I was like, oh, the points and the systems and that really. And then Dominion sent me all the way over the edge. So what was that like for you, sort of going to that next level?
Yeah, it was a very clear moment. It was during university, being on like a weekend away, and some people bought a bunch of board games, and the three they brought were, as it was known then, Settlers of Catan, Carcassonne, and Lost Cities.
Mm-hmm.
And so I played all three of those over the weekend, and that was it. That was like, I didn't know this existed, and I'm in.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
in a weird way, like, yes, my childhood self has been lying dormant, waiting for this time when board games would become good. Because I did play games as a kid, but only for so long. You know, the lure of video games is so strong. When games aren't that good, I had Amazing Labyrinth. I played Scotland Yard, and we had some okay games, but yeah, nothing beats the 90s German Revolution.
That's very cool. And then how long was it before you sort of started? You said, well, I'm going to try my hand. Like, were you a maker as a kid? Are there other ways you've been creative, music, other things? Or what got you to like, oh, I could actually do this?
Yeah, straight away. So that very weekend, I was like, I wonder why Lost Cities only plays 2. I wonder if I could make it play 4. So I got out some paper and cut it up and tried to make a 4-player version, and realized very quickly why it only plays 2. But no, definitely I've always been a maker as a kid. I made games. Like, I did make board games based on what I was playing. I've also been into music, been in bands, studied film at university, so have always made in whatever field I'm in. So when I got into, like, it wasn't really a decision like, I'm going to become a board game designer. It was just, I'm enjoying these, I will make one. Like, that's just how my brain goes, I guess.
And they got pretty good pretty fast, it sounds like, once you started touching modern hobby games. Like, what year was it when you were in college and had that weekend? And then what year was it when you started on archaeology?
Yeah, so it was 2004. I got into I think it was late 2004. I was introduced to those games. And then my first game that I self-published and did a handmade print run of was Archaeology. That was 2007. So in that couple of years, I mean, I wasn't doing it that whole time. It didn't kind of stick right away. But in that period, I was messing around. I made a couple of prototypes that didn't work. The whole getting to figure it out kind of thing. And then archaeology was the first thing. I was like, oh, this is like people are enjoying this. I might as well make 50 copies. That's that's what I did.
Yeah, yeah. And did you cut those cards by hand? Is that what you mean?
So, the very first thing I did was a board game, like with a board and some
Right.
small cards and tokens, and I cut all of that by hand.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
took ages per copy. And then when I finished that, I was like, I'm not doing another 50 of these. So I like redeveloped the idea into archaeology, the card game, which
And
was
is
very.
that just the same game without the board? I mean, are there different mechanisms going on there that you sort of
Yeah, it is
went
a
away
bit
from?
different. I like definitely
Okay.
improved it. It's really like a version 2.0 of the idea. It's way better. Like I'd already figured out
Right.
some stuff, and
Yeah.
I figured out, oh, if I just do cards, I could get them printed already, made. So I just printed them on business cards at a business card printer,
Mm.
and made
These
the type
are
box myself. So
these are like high collectors items. I got to track some of these down somehow.
I don't think that
Um,
I don't think they're that sought after, but I have a
just for
couple
me,
lying
just for collectors and sickos like me. You have a copy. I'll have to get in your will somehow. It's almost like you published a. It's almost like you published a prototype, kind of mid development, in the middle of playtesting, and put it out there. It's like
sort
as
of,
if
yeah.
you had some blind playtesting feedback from 50 copies you cut yourself.
Sort of, yeah, because like at that time, you know, there wasn't really nowhere near what there is now in terms of like what a self-publishing like
Right.
um little project could look like. So there was no Kickstarter, there was no Panda Factory website where you can just type in your quote and like it'll
Right.
make anything that you want. There wasn't really anything like that at all. So it just felt natural to me to just give it a crack and like, oh, here's 50 copies. I sold them at a local con. I sold a few online.
Mhm.
But what I learned was exactly what you say, that suddenly I've got 50 people I don't know playing my game and being way more harsh on it than my friends and family. And so I learned very quickly from that and then from the next one. And so I always tell new designers who ask, what's a big tip when you're starting out? I'm like, get the game out. Like,
Yeah.
even if it's
Yeah.
print and play, even if it, whatever you do, a free print and play online or something, that nothing beats like having a game in circulation. Like your first game doesn't have to be a masterpiece. It doesn't have to be $100 box. So just get something out. Yeah.
Yeah, and now we have these sort of indie game markets at places like PAX Unplugged, or I think they had it at Dice Tower West, where you can just set up a table with your handmade copies, just like you said,
Mm.
and sell those things. And it was pretty quick thereafter that you designed Dungeon Raiders and, in fact, Sushi Go, both of which are still in print today. And obviously, Sushi Go selling, over 1 million copies, God knows by now. And did you go to Kickstarter with Sushi Go? Am I right about that?
So for Sushi Go, so Dungeon Raiders was the first thing I produced at a factory. So
Hmm.
that was done at Ludofact in Europe.
Hmm.
And then I was like ready for the next one. And by that time, we didn't have Kickstarter. We didn't have access to Kickstarter in Australia in 2012, but we had what was it called? Uh, Indiegogo. Yeah, how could I
Hmm.
forget
Yep.
Indiegogo?
Yep.
So I used Indiegogo, raised I think 7 grand, which kind of mostly covered the printing,
Yeah.
I believe, and then I did a print run of that, and that both Dungeon Raiders and that I had a little distributor. Like I couldn't exist today in a way because if I started now, because like something we had 15 years ago, which you don't have now, is like access to distribution in the states
Mm,
at a very kind of micro level. Um,
sure.
that seems to have gone, and that makes it really tough. Whereas I was literally able to send, 200 copies of Sushi Go over
Right.
the seas, and they ended up in distribution without
Yeah.
much fuss.
Partly just because
Really
there are
cool.
so many titles now, so many people that have their one copy or their one title, that it's just sort of the workload to onboard something and keep track of it and pitch it to retailers is just so high. It's very tough to sort of crack into distribution, which is why Gamehead launched with 6 games so that we could appear at least established.
Yeah.
Well, very cool. The Adventureland seems like a cool time in your trajectory, but also, natural thing to move beyond. So let's get into sort of like now, let's say you're the Phil Walker Harding here today. And I'm going to get into some bigger questions. What makes a Phil Walker Harding game a Phil Walker Harding game? Sort of like, do you have a philosophy of what you want your games to do, or any sort of ethos, etc., bigger ideas about games?
Well, yes. So it's like I think of it as a bit of a sort of a loop that feeds itself in the sense that I started out self-publishing at a time when cost and size was incredibly important. So when I was forming my kind of game design muscles, I was thinking about small, low component count,
Hmm.
um, relatively easy to produce and make, and so I naturally kind of fell into making shorter, quicker, accessible games, and I was enjoying those very much at the time. So it felt like a really fun thing to do. I remember being very much into the Game Right. Game Right at the time had like a little rectangular box that they put all their card games in. So like Rat Attack Cat and Sleeping Queens and
Hmm.
all those. And Loot. And Loot was the one and Kaching, which I loved. So Loot and Kaching were two, which I was like, oh, this company's really cool. It's doing like
Hmm.
kid friendly graphics and gameplay, but like, oh, me and my friends really love Loot and Kaching as well. So I kind of had
Right.
that exact box in my mind for Sushi Go. And I ended up picking it up, which was amazing. But yeah, so that kind of formed me early, and then the more I got into design, the more I realized that that's actually something I wanted to do was make games that were accessible, easy to play, easy to learn. Because I suppose my gaming friends here that I was testing with and playing with were more casual gamers, and that's just the world I've always been in. I don't go to like three different game groups every week who play heavy Euros. I generally just hang out
Hmm.
with a wide circle who play a bit of the easy stuff. And so that's just where
Sure.
I've always been. And so over time, sort of grown into thinking about how I think about that, what's important about that, how to do that well. So I sort of do have some, not formal maxims, but I do have some things in my head that have sort of become rules over time for how I think about doing that well for myself. Um, yeah, but in the last 5 years, I've also tried to stretch my wings a bit and try a bunch of other genres and things.
That
Um,
was what I was gonna ask here, is that sort of like starting 2015, you design Cacao, which I would say is significantly larger than the games you're describing, Sushi Go, Dungeon Raiders, etcetera, and then from there, you have Imhotep, Hard Upon, and then Baron Park and Gizmos. Do those still fall into the same category you're talking about? Obviously, I think when most people think about Phil Walker Harding games, that's what they imagine. So was that a shift for you? And then what do you think is like the thread tying those together? What makes those all cohesive in the Phil sort of world?
well, actually, it's interesting. So Imhotep and Cacao were designed before Dungeon Raiders and Sushi Go. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, so I'd done archaeology and it got signed by Z-Man in 2009, and I was thinking like, okay, like I want to, I'm not like fully sold on just doing Adventureland games. I want to work with publishers. So I was
Mhm.
designing bigger box stuff at that time. And those two games I entered into a competition, Studio Giocchi in Venice, in a famous
Mhm.
design comp, and they didn't win, but they both did well in that comp and got picked up kind of through that competition. But they also both kind of got passed around publishers for a few years. So Cacao came out 2015 and Imhotep 2016, which was
Right.
after Sushi Go. but they were actually older games that I'd already designed. So
Yeah.
they were like, I think of them as like my two like burst of inspiration. I'm a new designer. Here's my
Mhm.
games. That
Yeah.
I think a lot of new designers, their first or second or third thing is like amazing, and they were
Mhm.
like my I don't know what I'm doing. Here's two like
Sure.
German style big box family games. Bang. And they both just happened to come out a bit later. But I see them very much in the same category because while their footprint's bigger, the rule set and the teach still, I think, fits broadly within what I'm going for, which is a very easy teach. You can learn the game by watching a round or two,
Sure.
and a relatively accessible experience. So they both fit into that to me. They just happen to be bigger.
Yeah, that's cool. And then sort of you were saying in the last few years you've sort of pushed into other genres. What sort of fits there? Is Misfit Heroes part of that? It feels like it steps into the modern tableau building wingspan sort of
Yeah,
genre.
yeah. So, sorry, excuse me. Um,
That's all right. And
so
by the
done
way,
it.
we can edit anything
Great.
that
Yeah,
we
yeah.
need to
Great.
edit
I'd love
out.
you to
So
add that
that's
on my
that's not a
coughing.
problem.
That'd be wonderful.
And before we go on, do you have like a hard stop time or anything? We usually
Not
do like an
really.
hour
No.
or sometimes spill
Yeah, yeah.
over. Okay.
I'm pretty fine.
Okay, cool.
um. So yeah, had a dabble in some party games. Ugh, we'll just make that edit a bit longer.
Yeah,
Um,
that's no problem.
started dabbling in some party games and just different things I wouldn't naturally do because of being approached by different publishers
Mm,
with ideas. And yeah, Misfit Heroes definitely fits in to this space because it sort of came out of giving myself a very specific like game design challenge, which was out
mhm.
of my wheelhouse.
And what
Um,
was that exactly? Like, how did you envision what you're trying to do with Misfit Heroes? Because it's not, it sort of has this hook as a card crafting game. It uses those translucencies, but that's not the gameplay. That's a sort of
no,
feature of this unique deck and this changing deck. But what was the sort of spec that you gave yourself to design around?
it was that component quirk. It was can I? So I've been playing. It was the sort of around pandemic time. I've been playing a lot of. Oh my gosh, I'm blanking. The
Custom heroes or,
I have been playing custom heroes. No, the unique deck, the Fantasy Flight unique
oh,
deck, Richard Garfield,
Keyforge.
Keyforge, of course.
Oh, great
Um,
game.
been playing Keyforge a lot, and going like, oh wow, like this is like a lot of CCGs like haven't landed with me as a player, but that one
Right.
I was like, oh, this is like it's a really cool system. Um, but it also just got me thinking about designing one, you know, because like when you look at that game and you play through a few decks, you can see what Richard Garfield's doing very
Mhm.
clearly. You can see the constraints he's working within, and so I was like, oh, I wonder if I wonder how you go about making CCG cards. And I
Mm.
started kind of like fiddling around with thinking about that, and I kind of thought like, well, obviously there's patterns here. Like you could
Sure.
auto generate, you know, 1,000 cards in some fashion and then pick the good ones. Like there's a
Mhm.
language, there's a style of how they come together and what variables they have. And so it then I thought, what if the game could make the cards? So
Mhm.
what if you came up with all these variables somehow and put them together in crazy combinations and see what the game made? And so
Yeah.
the only way I could think that you could ever do that would be transparencies because it's a way to combine two things sort of
Yeah.
mechanically.
And was there a
So,
version
yeah,
of the game where you were doing that in the game, or was it always a piece of setup?
no, had no interest in that. As in,
Okay. Okay.
like John D. Clare's got that covered. Like
Sure.
he's
Yes.
done
Right.
multiple games that do that really well and in interesting ways. And I was like, I don't want to re-explore that. I want to explore can randomly inserting
Yeah.
transparencies in front of cards create like good things that you hadn't thought of
Yeah. Yeah.
or
Yeah.
that were interesting. So that was a starting point. And the first version was way more complicated, felt much more like a traditional CCG,
Mhm.
and had more had like a couple more variables that were being influenced by that combination moment
Mhm.
during setup. But it was just so heavy. It was such a slog. We needed to
Right.
get the gameplay back to something simple, and that's when I kicked into like, what would my midweight tableau builder be? And that's when
Right.
I came up with the system that is now in place with the
And
grid.
what are the midweight tableau builders that you sort of had in mind? Because it sounds like it sort of almost started as a similar dueling style system,
Yep.
which is a really cool. I mean, I'd love to see that prototype. But what are, as you envision the sort of like modern landscape of this hugely popular genre, what are the tableau builder? I call them deck diggers because you have this gigantic deck of all unique cards that are exciting, and you're digging for combos. One of my favorite features of Misfit Heroes is just how much it lets you dig through that deck to get cards that you need. I think that's a key feature. But what were the other games that you sort of looked at and thought, all right, I'm going to take a little bit from here, or I like what they did over here?
Well, like the all-time great for me has always been Race for the Galaxy,
Yeah.
and in terms of like a tableau builder that has a bit of a CCG feel, where you're finding different synergies in this big deck you've never thought of before. So that's always been my gold standard for this style of game. I still play Race, still love Race.
Hmm.
More recently, though, like there's been a lot of attempts at essentially like I think Elizabeth has even said that Wingspan was kind of an attempt at like taking Race and what's good
Mm.
about it and making it a more accessible game experience for more people. And that's what
Hmm.
Wingspan kind of
Hmm.
does. It breaks down your tableau into a more simple form. It's not about blowing up planets, all that kind of stuff.
Right. Right.
So there's been lots of attempts, and lots of different games have done this. Obviously, like I would say, Wingspan and Terraforming Mars are the two that have just like really, really like hit the landscape and become new standards there.
Hmm.
But the other one for me, which I've really been enjoying, actually, is Forest Shuffle.
I
And
thought
I
you
think
might
it's
say that.
because Forest Shuffle kind of just takes all the best bits from the last 10 years. It's like, let's take the best bits from Trying to Improve Race from the last 10
Yeah.
years and let's like put them all in one box. And there you go. And so Forest Shuffle's been a lot of fun. The thing, though, that none of them do really much, I mean, they do them a little bit, but is work with space on the table. So spatial
Hmm.
relationships. And I always thought, imagine a tableau builder, but the spatial relationships of your cards really matter where they are on the table.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so that was kind of the my attempt to kind of bring something new to the genre. Was everything's in a grid, and the grid matters, and you trigger different things in different positions and place things next to certain things for certain reasons.
Hmm.
And
That's fabulous.
that's kind of the angle I went with.
So let's jump back a bit, all the way back, I guess, to Imhotep, which in our tier list, I said this was God tier, above S tier. This is the masterwork, I think. Since you were so early
Yeah.
in designing, and I think that this is part of what allows you to do this, is like you don't have as much knowledge, and so you take bigger swings. What were you thinking about in that time as you sort of started with Imhotep? Where does that design start? And then we know sort of where it ends, but what's the path along the way?
Yeah, like it is a really good example of being a young designer. So the path was, I want to make a game about building the pyramids.
Mhm.
Okay. I'll get some paper and write down some ideas. I'll get some blocks and start playing with them. And I started just thinking through what a game with big blocks that you made the pyramids would be. And I
Mhm.
remember pretty distinctly, I might have only been drawing notes at this stage, but I remember pretty distinctly, drawing a pyramid and thinking about how the blocks would score and blah, blah, blah. And then going, that's not enough. Like, that's one object. The game has to be more pyramids than one for this to
Yeah.
work. And so I started
Right.
drawing other, and I was like, well, hang on, they don't all have to be pyramids. You could have a tomb, you could
You
have
have
an
an
obelisk.
obelisk. Yeah.
And, I'm a very casual fan of like Egyptology. So I instantly had all the cliches to plug in to the idea.
Yeah.
And so it was that simple. And I was like, well, how do we? And then I just thought very practically, like very simplistically, like, how do we get our blocks here? Well, they have to go on boats to get there. So I guess one thing you
Mhm.
can return is put them on a boat. And then I guess, well, you need new. blocks. So one turn could be quarrying and getting 3 new stones.
Yeah.
So it was
Yeah.
that simple at the start. And then when I first started playtesting it, straight away I realized, oh, by almost by accident, I've created this system where, because it seemed natural that I would give you the power to sail a boat regardless of whose blocks are in it, I've accidentally kind of created this really interesting shared incentive system on the boats.
Mhm.
And I was like, that's the game. That's the game,
Yeah.
not building a pyramid or whatever. The game is the timing and the planning around placing your stones and when to sail which ship. And so it was just sort of like stumbling into a good idea. And
Yeah,
then
yeah.
I guess having just enough experience to go, that's the key. And then recalibrating everything around that. And then finishing it as best I could at the time. It ended up with Cosmos, and they have a great development team. And that last like 5-10% of getting the scores balanced and everything,
Mhm.
they were very helpful with, like if anything, an old school German publisher can do well. It's like, let's get this 5% of the scoring all
Yeah.
very,
Yeah, yeah,
very
yeah.
tied up and fair and balanced. And so that was great to have at an early time too. But yeah, that's how it came about. Like fully, and this is why I say to new designers, like if you've got an idea that's like really burning inside you just to do, which I for some reason had about
Right.
the pyramids, like just jump in, because you might stumble across, just through that sheer like exuberance of youth, you might stumble into something really cool.
Well, what I think is a good lesson about that story is that you started, yes, with theme, but you went into the smallest version of it first. And you said, okay, well, it's just a pyramid. Let's just build this pyramid. And then you said, okay, but I have to, get stones. So how am I going to get stones? And you just sort of build it up through the gameplay until it's something decent. Like you don't have to start with a vision for the Knizia esque system, the action system and the balance core. Like maybe as a more experienced designer, you might do that. But as a new designer, you really don't have to. And it's much smarter to not, because you'll get something to the table much quicker. You brought up something, though, in there that I really want to touch on, which is balance. And I think for some of the heavier gamers, and our podcast is listened to by many sort of they might consider them hardcore gamers. They might consider themselves that. Um, they might say, well, fill games are like overbalanced. They're like too balanced, and everything you do, maybe you'll end up within 5 points. And so I push back on that, and it doesn't mean exactly the same thing to me. But my question is, uh, one, how much of the balance at this stage are you doing and thinking about? Is that in your skill wheelhouse? And then two, like, how do you think about balance? Is it
Mm.
important to you? What does it mean, etc.?
Yeah, like it's a fascinating discussion. And I think since I've started, I've really seen it become almost like a lightning rod kind of talking point amongst
Hmm.
designers and like hobbyist players.
Yeah,
And I think I have a lot of thoughts about it. I think that one word balance is not enough to talk about what we're talking about.
sure.
I think like we need to at least break it down into like having a discussion about fairness. So
Well,
like
listen,
no
you've
one.
landed on exactly what we like to do on this show, which is break down the words and get into the nitty gritty and the semantics and be as clear as we can about this. So the decision out listeners are excited for this. So let's break down balance. What are we talking about?
Well, so like to me, when I use the word, and I know it can be used in many different ways, I am thinking about that. I want the game to be fair, in the sense that, like, if we're playing a card game and you get dealt a starting hand and I get dealt a starting hand and we play through 20 to 30 cards each, I want to not win because I drew more kings than you, like
Mhm.
I want to win because I used my cards better. So the
Right. So
first thing
this
about
sort
balance
of
to me.
randomness could undercut fairness. Is that sort of the first thing you're saying there?
Yeah, I guess so. Like, I mean, but even randomness, randomness to me again, we need to break down. We need to break
Sure.
down. So I,
There's
so
input
I often use the
randomness, there's
word.
output randomness.
I often use the word like uncertainty. Like
Okay.
every game needs uncertainty. Well, like
Mhm.
unless you're making an abstract or something, but like uncertain things happening in the game need, like almost all games require surprise and uncertainty.
Mhm.
And some sort of fog of war in front of you about what's going to happen. And that's different though to me to you drew a king, I drew a two, you now have 10 times a better chance of winning than I do. Like, if that makes sense. So randomness is
Yeah,
often used to mean bad uncertainty or unwelcome
sure.
uncertainty or unfair uncertainty. So when I think about like I balanced every card in Sushi Go as much as I did because I wanted every player to feel like they were given the same chance to win and
Mhm.
they had to play the odds the best to win. But if no one would say, "Oh, make sashimi worth 50 points and then play." Like
Right,
that's not a fun game.
right.
That's unfair because whoever draws the most sashimi is got a huge advantage, and that's not
Mhm.
interesting to me. So that when I think about balance, that's what I'm thinking about. It's I want an even playing field upon which my players need to deal with uncertainty the bet and like ride that kind of the winds of uncertainty the best and come out on top by making the best gambles, the best choices, the best risks. So that's why I do, and I do think I do balance my games in that sense pretty well. So, like in Sushi Go or Imhotep, like each individual play is roughly worth X points,
Right,
and that's something I wanted, and I tried to get
right.
because I didn't want, and again, because I'm mostly thinking about newer players and more casual players as my audience, I don't want their job to be let me analyze all four sideboards on Imhotep and figure out which one's the best deal.
Mhm.
I want them to think, okay, they're all a good deal, but in this moment, like which one am I going to kind of leverage? Which one am I going to kind of go all in on? Which one am I going to take a
Right.
risk? That's what's fun to me, not the analysis of what's the best path. Oh, I'll do that path. Um,
Sure.
so if my games do have that feeling, I think that's why, because I'm thinking about a new player and wanting to relieve them of any sense of needing to kind of decode the game.
Yeah, that's something I've always said about your games and games that I like in general is that the, uh, balance, but more to that point, the sort of user interface and the core systems communicate themselves really plainly. Like the value of cards is not at all opaque in Sushi Go, and it's not even that hard for a fifth grader, a third grader, maybe even to go, oh, two of these for five is better than this one for two. Oh,
Yes.
and the three is the best card, but if I get three of these, then it's 10. And it's sort of like, it's very easy and transparent as to like what are the incentives. Now the uncertainty of course is what are other people going to take? Is it going to be there? Is it not? I saw it already. Is it going to make it is the hand going to make it around to me? um but when I know in Imhotep for example, okay, this spot is 1 point, that spot is 3 points, I'd love to get on the four. I know that I'm getting something, and I think maybe some people balk at that. They don't like that everything gives you something. It doesn't feel like they've earned it maybe enough. But for me, I feel like I'm edging my win out by finding this sneaky
Yeah.
small play.
Yeah.
It's like a game of inches, like
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
baseball where it's, yes, I'm going to just find my way towards it by hedging my bets a little bit. I know that this is going to go somewhere. And so if it's in the second position, that's good. Is that a little bit of what you're talking about here?
Exactly. Like there's often that moment in a game of Sushi Go where you're like, okay, I'm going for sashimi. I'm
Right.
doing it. It's going to be risky. There's only two more out there, but I'm doing it. And
Yeah.
when you win that round, you're like, hey, like that was the moment. I won the round.
Right.
Now, totally understand. Like, I don't want this in every game I ever play, and I play heavy games, and obviously, can appreciate different styles of play. But I think when you're designing games to kind of welcome people into board games and to maybe even undo some of their like monopoly trauma or whatever.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
to me, it is quite important to like give good feedback to players as they
Right.
play, right?
Yeah.
And often
Yeah.
that is, oh, I didn't quite know what I was doing, but I got 2 points back from it. Oh, okay,
Right.
okay. But
Right.
hang on,
Sure.
if I'd done that, I would have gotten 3 points. Like
Mhm.
that to me is actually quite an important part of um, helping newer players to games like feel at ease. and feel
Yeah.
welcome to the table. Um, Now, some players may kind of, I guess, outgrow that need, and some players
Right.
may never have it, and that's fine. But I found in my experience that that's actually a really it's a good attribute to want to put into my games. I find
Right.
helps players um, ease in to my game,
Yeah.
but then also ease into maybe other games, and I think that that's important.
Yeah. I think that there's a lot of conflation between close scores and close games. And a game like, for example, this is a big criticism of Honey Buzz, which I designed, that the game can be incredibly close and you can lose by 60 points right at the end. But also, a game of Imhotep can be within 10, 15 points out of 70, but you actually got beat every round all along, and I think for the crowd you're talking about, it's a little better to err on the side of people not realizing, people feeling okay about their gameplay through this little like. I appreciate games like Castles of Mad King Ludwig that sort of feed you a few points every turn, or Reef. It just gives you a little bit of points every turn. Um, and it has, I think there's some pushback on that, sort of
Yeah.
almost iconoclasm, but I think that's it's really good. One question I have is sort of like, what is the game of yours that is the furthest away from that, or from, whatever's a fill game? I think some of the party games would probably, it's not like your typical space. But what do you think? Is there anything that's especially spiky, that's like especially wild and interactive, or has bigger turns? Anything like that?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is Wrath of Fire Mountain, which I designed with Eric Lang,
Oh
because
yeah,
it's
yeah,
with
yeah, yeah.
Eric Lang. Um,
Right.
and that was like born out of me wanting like to try something different and
Mm,
wanting to try a straight up area control game
right.
in which one dude on one square could make a big difference in how much you score and swing the whole game.
Right.
Like,
And the
um,
movement of that tile could totally break up the
that's right.
areas in a
Yeah,
big
that's right.
swingy
There's
moment. That's right.
lots of like ability to like. It's a quite a swingy game. Now, having said that,
Yeah.
like it still has like we went back and forth many times about how harsh the edges should be, and
Mhm.
came to an agreement in that we're designing for a much younger audience and want it to be a little smoother. We don't want it to be 20 to nothing at the end. We want
Right.
kids to be able to what we've been talking about, learn the system through some
Mhm.
early positive feedback. But still, like as my games go, that's probably one. But that's kind of its whole purpose. Like that's exactly why
Sure.
I I,
Yeah.
I wanted to make
Perfect.
something in that genre.
And you mentioned a little while ago that you play heavy games, and so I'm curious. A couple things. One is like, what's been on your table lately? What do you like? What style of games do you like? How far does it go away from the style of games you design? Let's start there.
Well, I will say this is more like it's more going back to the olden days,
Hmm.
um, when I was more a player than a designer,
Sure.
and I had
Sure.
the time and the space to explore, and I liked playing everything. Um,
Right. Right.
as someone who's now unfortunately more a designer than a player, I
Yeah.
have like I have to eke out my design time,
Yeah. It is
um,
tough.
and choose my playtime way more strictly, which is frustrating. But like two of my favorites from the early days that I still play are Tigris and Euphrates
Hmm.
and Princes of Florence.
These
Which
these are
you,
both games that are beloved by Decision Space hosts.
oh great. Well,
Yeah.
like I think they sum up to me um different ways a game can be quote unquote heavy that
Hmm.
aren't so much the vogue now. So heavy,
Hmm.
complexity now comes from I think quite different places than it did in the late 90s, early 2000s,
Right.
those two games. So, but yeah, I have, and I like trying new things regardless of weight. If I know they're like when Root came out, I'm obviously like, I've got to try
Yeah.
Root. I've got to jump into this. Like, complexity doesn't really bother me. um, but it's not my like most comfortable space to design or play in. But I'm
Right.
always like watching and trying to understand what's happening with designers
That's
who are
really
designing at that
interesting.
level. Yeah.
Yeah, and Root is also another beloved game from the third host of this thing, so you're really enamoring yourself to everybody. Um, Going back to those 2 titles, Tigris and Euphrates and also Princess of Florence, what what are the lessons to be learned about complexity in those? And maybe,
Mm.
you could give a little overview for listeners that don't really know how that works, but, um, how does that work there in difference in comparison to what's going on now or what your games look like? Are there things that you've taken from that? Like, walk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, so like Tigris, if you don't know it, it's a tile laying game. We're all laying tiles on a shared board. No one really owns anything, though, and you're placing your leaders down to kind of take control of clumps of tiles.
Mhm.
And conflicts can happen between clumps of tiles, and ownership can change, and tiles can come off the board. It's very fluid. It sort of feels like if you know a classic like Acquire, it has some DNA of
Mhm.
that, but
Right.
it's like this incredibly emergent, organic. Well, it's civilizations rising and falling on the board.
Right. Right.
Um, its rule set is not very complicated. Like if you think about on a turn what your choices are, they're very they're very small. They take two actions which are all basically put something on the board.
Put a tile
Um,
down, yeah.
but the complexity comes from the fact that this through a relatively simple system, Kinesia is somehow able to make this organism thing. Like the board feels
Yeah.
like an organism that grows and dies and regrows. And that system he's created means that every tile placement has like 4 billion vectors to think to think
Sure.
about.
Yeah.
And not really for that turn necessarily, but for the future of the game.
Yeah.
Um, and that is incredibly complex to me.
Yeah.
When a conflict happens in that game, like when you first are learning the game and you trigger a conflict, sometimes you didn't foresee what would happen. Like you can see the board, but because
Yeah.
certain things come off the board and disconnect certain other tiles, you're like, oh, I didn't mean for that to happen. Like there's a lot to think about, and because it's very interactive and like quite in your face interaction, you've got other personalities at the table to think about. Like so much
Yeah, exactly.
weight comes from I have no idea what this dude's going to do.
And that's a lot of the
um,
uncertainty in a game like that.
yeah,
It's not
yeah,
the randomness of a tile pull so much as it is, what are these people interested in doing? What could they be trying to do? What moves are possible? And so it's very different from um, a lot of the complexity we see now. We might say this comes from John Perry that those are really chunky decisions. They're very small and limited in what you have capacity to do. You have a tile, you put it down on the board, but the long term implications of what that does to the emergent dynamics are immense.
yeah, yeah, totally exact. Yeah, that's exactly right. And that sort of complexity isn't sort of around very much, mostly
Yeah,
because like most very complex games now um, don't have much shared space.
yeah, a
Um,
lot of personal player areas.
yeah, and that's a whole that's a I almost think of that as like a genre divide,
Hmm.
uh,
Hmm.
and I understand the appeal of both, and I think over time they're going to come in and out of vogue with designers. But yeah, Tigress is like for me the poster child for like complexity can come from many other places, and
Yeah.
particularly competed like organic space is like a key one. With
And
Princes of Fun,
do you play a lot of Knizia games? You have a lot of experience with
oh, of course,
his work. I mean,
yeah, of
yeah,
course, of course, of course. He's like sometimes it feels like he taught me a lot of game design
yeah,
because when I started out, Lost Cities is a great example of a game to start with because like I mean all of his games, the design is just right there on the cards and the table. Like they
yeah,
almost are object lessons in design sometimes. And certainly like Ra, like Ra teaches you scoring mechanisms.
Yeah, it
That's what
does.
that
It's
game
that's
is.
my number one favorite game is
Yeah.
Ra and Priests of Ra, which is sort of a similar game with
I've
different
actually never
types of.
played Priest of Ra.
You're gonna want to play Priests of Ra, Phil. It's really
It's
good.
it's just like double sided. Everything's double sided. Is that the
Yeah, exactly. Everything's double sided, so you have on a turn where you pull, you get a choice. You have a little more agency every turn, and for that
interesting?
reason, you're looking a little more around the table. What am I trying to create for myself or for you? It's a little
Yeah,
different.
yeah, yeah. But if you look at a lot of like all game design, like all Euro adjacent game design, like Kinesia kind of forged the dictionary of like different ways to score stuff for modern
Yeah,
Euros, and
right.
like obviously a lot of those things existed before and all that, but he was the one to me who like clarified all of that.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I'm
Other
always
favorites in the Kinesia world? I mean, Lost Cities for me was also like the same week that I learned Dominion, I learned Lost Cities.
yeah. Oh, what a time. So
Yeah,
yeah, Lost Cities and Battle Line are two
yeah.
like I think all time just genius pieces of game design. Tigress, Ra, um, they're always up there.
Any hidden gems in the Kinesia that you
Hidden
want to tell us
Great
about?
question. I wish I thought about this.
Yeah.
Um, we'll come back to it. Let me have a think.
All right, sure, no problem. Well, let me shift gears back a little bit to contemporary times. Are there in recent, and this could be this month, this year, or whatever, are there games you've played recently that you liked, and more specifically, an experience that I have as a designer, and especially have had with your games, is like, God, that's clever, and God, I wish I had thought of that.
Mm.
Um, do you have that experience with games you're playing now? Can you sort of point to any of those recently?
Oh, definitely have that experience. I don't think I've had it like super recently. Um, Let me think. So, I mean, one would be Forest Shuffle. So,
Yeah.
I've been thinking about Tableau builders since first playing Race, I guess.
Hmm.
And um, one thing I've always thought about is like bringing in multiple currencies. And surely, like, if we're paying
Sure.
for cards with cards, we can bring in three currencies and do some really cool stuff with currencies. And like, surely that's a huge piece of design space. And why hasn't anyone done currencies with cards, paying for cards? And could never get that idea to go anywhere. Um, and I think Forest Shuffle does this brilliant thing, which is every card is a currency, as in those little
Right.
different colored leaf icons. And you
Right.
get bonuses if you pay for something with the correct currency. You get some really cool bonus, but you never have to.
Yeah.
And I think that is exactly the way to implement currencies in a pay for cards with cards game. And I was like, oh, yes,
Right.
of course. Because every version I tried, it was like way too constricting. It's like, well, I didn't draw any green, so I can't pay for my green. I'm stuck.
Yeah.
What was the point of even doing this? Of course, it needs to be any card pays for any card. Tom Lehman was
Yeah.
right the whole time. But this is like a super fun little thing because then, of course, you now have this little currency icon on all your cards. You can then key off that in other ways as well, with scoring and other stuff. So, like, that was a brilliant decision. I really noticed because that was something I was trying to kind of solve for a long time.
Yeah.
And the other one I really think about it with is Point Salad.
Mm.
In that, for a long time, I've been trying to do a filler card game where um, every card is either a thing or a thing
Yeah.
that scores a thing, and to just absolutely lean into cards that score other cards as the whole thing, as the whole game. And I tried 100 different versions and setups and had thrown away
Just
100
didn't get
versions.
there.
And yeah, I was
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
like that's an idea, but it's not a game. And then I think as soon as I just read like the news announcement of that game,
Yeah.
and I was like,
Well,
yeah, you use the backs, you use the back,
yeah,
and
I had
every
a similar
that's how you do it.
experience with when I was working on Stamp Swap. I had this whole system of you're driving mail trucks around and sort of pick up and deliver, but you're also collecting the postage that you use to deliver things or ordering themselves. And Then I played the USPS mail race game, and I was like, all right, well, they kind of did that, so I guess I'm not going to work on that part. Because sometimes somebody else does it real good, like.
Yeah.
And let's go back to something you mentioned because you said, especially as a kid, there's video games that are incredibly immersive. Do you still play video games?
Not really, no. And
Yeah.
but almost as a choice, just in
Okay.
like I don't have the time. Like
Sure.
I
Right. Right.
need to, like, if I've got time to play, it's like it's kind of got to be staying in touch with what's happening in tabletop. So I kind
Sure.
of made the choice not to fully keep pursuing what's happening in video games, but every now and again I'll dabble in something.
Well, part of the reason I asked is because, for one, we're seeing a lot of like video game port overs, so to speak, of like Slay the Spire and many other games. But a big one that we're seeing like many versions of is Balatro, and I think some would think that All In Predictions, which is a fabulous card game from this year, got some inspiration there. Have you played Balatro, and is there any sort of inspiration from anything like that?
No,
There you go.
haven't played it. Um, All In predates it.
Okay.
So no, but
Do you
obviously, like every game designer in the world, I know what like
you know what it is?
designers when they get together now, like they used to talk about deck builders and
Sure.
what our deck builder
Right.
did, but now they're talking about this. They're talking about, and it's really interesting, isn't it? Because like Balatro and Slay the Spire sort of have their roots in tabletop games. Um,
Right. Yeah.
and it's kind of this really fascinating cross pollination that's happened where it's like, okay, let's take a deck builder or whatever, but with infinite digital possibilities,
Mhm.
which those games do. And then, like, okay, now how do we take what they discovered by having no limitations on physical components? How do we take some of what they
Bring it
discovered
back
back
over.
to the table?
Yeah.
Yeah, really interesting time in design. And, like, yeah, there's a few games coming out now that seem to be Balatro kind of spin offs,
Yeah.
riffs.
For
And I
sure.
think that's like really an interesting thing that's happened. To me, what's interesting and why I designed All In was like it's more just that intersection between a traditional card game
Yeah.
that's in everybody's memory somehow, and the discussion between those sorts of cultural games and and the sorts of games I design, and how can I talk back to what people already know?
All in Predictions is really, as I said, it's one of my favorite games from 2026. It's never not been a hit. I think it's really clever. And again, part of its cleverness is its ability to dig through the deck to get you the cards that you need to get to. But one of the funny things about it, I have a feeling you'll say that this predates what I'm about to say, but people have described it as like this is this is the gang. Sorry, yeah, this is the gang,
Yeah,
but competitive. And of course, competitive, the gang is just poker, and this is not exactly poker. But does this predate the gang also?
yeah. So they're like, what that game was. My design brief to myself for that game was like, it's poker, but it's a hand building kind of game. So
Hmm.
I can like, if I'm clever, I can get four of a kind or a royal flush by
It's like
building the game.
it's almost like a rummy poker.
Yeah, that's now the whole like predicting each other's hands, deducing what each other's doing. That element came quite came later in the design process, and then
Hmm.
was like focused on even more during development with next move. So and yeah, and obviously that's part of the game, and it's an important part of the game.
Right.
But like its genesis wasn't like how can I do some sort of like interactive mind game puzzle around poker, or um, although I think the game's cool, it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't. That wasn't the genesis. The genesis was I want to get a royal flush for once in my life. Let me get a royal flush,
Yeah. Right.
um, and and going from there. So
And the game provides both incentives. And when I teach the game, I say, you know, everyone wants to get a good hand. Like that's you will get reliable points by getting a good hand, so definitely do that. And the predictive part is baked into the name, partly because it's a twist. It's an obvious hook, but it's also can be a small part of the game because there's not that many points to split up, and often people are agreeing on who has the best hand. One of the things I do think it has some interesting room for almost bluffing. One of the things that I have liked and tried to do, especially, is go all in early
Mm.
and try to convince people somehow that I have a really good hand, but then listen to the rest of the round and maybe be the only person that is able to bid on somebody else and pull out the big chunk for myself, which can sometimes happen.
Yeah, and the Joker cards being the two cards that are just worth points by just being in your
Yeah,
hand.
yeah, yeah.
They are sort of the puck that gets knocked around in
Hmm.
terms of if you're going to do that. Like if you can get two Jokers early, you've got a good hand. Like forget about what else
Right,
is in your hand, and no one else
right.
probably wants them at that stage. So that was like a little like trail of breadcrumbs to lay for people who want to do that. It's like, well, I've
Yeah.
already got 2 or 4 points in my hand. Let's call it now.
Right,
Um,
maybe a 3 of a kind and, you know, these 4-point jokers is a really good hand, whereas in the middle of a round, 3 of a kind, you wouldn't wanna stop, you'd wanna dig for the 4th or finish a full house. That's very cool. Let's, shift gears again. I know we have a lot of budding designer, so to speak, in the decision space world. And I know a bit about this, but tell people a bit about your process because just my sense is you ideate a lot and you have notebooks that are just full of half baked fillers out there. And then sometimes they get to the table and sometimes they get all the way to a publisher. Like, walk us through that.
well, okay. Well, the first thing to say is I actually like something's become kind of clear to me more recently, which is obvious, but has only sort of dawned on me, which is I actually think this, what I'm about to say, like it shifts over time in your career. Like when you start, my advice is like find a concept that really inspires you and take it all the way, finish it and
Hmm.
put it out.
Hmm.
And even if you know it's not, your magnum opus, put something out early, take an idea and like do the discipline of like completing that idea. Um, and that's how I started, and that's my advice. And within that, the iteration part is like iterating on that one design intensely with different playtest groups to learn and shape it.
Sort of
Um,
a minimum viable product concept. And so
I
is
guess
that
so.
what you're
Yeah.
trying to do by put the quickest version you can on the table? Like put the prototype out in front of playtesters? Is that what that looks like for you now as a
So
professional and
so
seasoned designer?
now the way it's shifted now is that a lot of the iteration happens way, 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 way earlier, which
Mhm.
is I now might generate 5 new ideas in a week and
Yeah.
see my job as like instantly cutting off at the pass which ones I'm not even going to bother with anymore.
Sure.
And that's
Sure.
when it's like, okay, got an idea. This could either be amazing or terrible. As quickly as possible, I want to get it to the table in some form. And with 15 years of brain experiences built up, you kind of learn to see where there might be a glimmer of hope and when there's not. So my process now,
Right.
like all so much of that iteration has moved to the beginning of like, this isn't nothing, this is nothing, this is nothing. This might be something, you know. And then that then gets put on the conveyor belt of, I guess, more regular development. Um,
Mhm.
but and when I talk to game designers who are, decades into their career, this is more what's happening. It's more like ideas are like they're not hard to come by. It's
Right.
like ones that are worth sinking my teeth into for months and months and months and months. So
And is that pruning happening in your mind or on the page of a notebook, or do you actually make prototypes for, how many of the ideas that you have do you even write on cards and play on a
Yeah, yeah.
table or have any physical instantiation of.
Maybe, yeah, maybe half. So like, I have gotten to the point where like sketching out a game in a notebook, maybe trying to figure out what the deck of cards would be, like trying to like do those
Yeah,
early steps on paper. Often, like, it doesn't necessarily tell you a game's going to be good, of course, but it often will tell you. Well, for me, it often says like, don't bother. Like, the
right.
idea. This isn't it. This ain't it. And so I think I've gotten way better at sensing that early. So I would say about like half. I mean, how do you quantify what an idea is? But half of
Sure,
my
sure.
ideas get to that. I'm writing it down. I'm thinking it through. I'm maybe playing a turn in my head and trying to come up with what the deck.
Right, right.
Nah, this isn't it.
Well, and then the other thing is you can be, this happens to me as a developer. You can be pretty far along trying and knowing that there's something that you want to have happen, but you can't quite solve it. And maybe we're going to leave it behind. I mean, I have a game now that I was like, you know what, this is never going to work. We're going to leave it behind and not publish it. And eventually we find the thing. So, what of your designs that we might know about has gone through that cycle of actually having a physical version prototype on a table and
Mhm.
getting better, but still not feeling there? And like, maybe I should have pruned this, but it eventually gets there. Do you have those? I mean, is that Tropicalia? I know that that was a long
Yeah,
design
yeah, yeah.
process for you.
Yeah, I mean, I have lots that are very long. Um, yeah, yeah, it's an interesting question. Because yeah, normally that like this ain't it feeling is for me comes very early. So
Yeah.
if it's getting into development for a long period of time, I believe in something in it. But I would say the two that come to mind are Gingerbread House
Mm.
and Tropicalia, because they both underwent like like very significant mid process like shifts.
Did
Whereas,
Gingerbread House predate Barren Park in its beginnings?
yeah. So
Wow, that is
that was a
surprising.
that like, but Barron Park like shaped like fixed it. So
The
like
finish. Yeah,
in
okay,
a
yeah.
weird way. So like the original gingerbread house was a shared board. Everyone's playing dominoes to a shared
Mm.
board and growing the house. And I actually have gone back to that design quite recently to kind of think, oh, I still think there might be something there that I really want to potentially get back to. But the way that game was developing was it was like it was a I have my own board game. I have my own board
Yeah,
game.
right. Game,
I was
yeah.
playing on a shared board, and it was just feeling random and a bit crazy. But after I finished Baron Park, I was like, because the covering up an icon to get that icon
Right,
idea
right.
came from the first gingerbread house. I put it in Baron Park. I finished Baron Park, and then I was like, Baron Park taught me a lot um about shared space versus personal space.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh, that's kind of what Gingerbread House needed. It needs some interaction, but actually way less than I thought, because people just like stacking dominoes. And so let them stack
Sure.
dominoes on their own little domino stack. And so that was like, so I think the first Gingerbread House was 2011 or 2012, Baron Park's 2016, 17, and then Gingerbread House was right after Baron Park. So Baron Park kind of helped me finish that. And then Tropicalia, similar starting time to, I guess that was 2013. I started that, and it just like hung around in enjoyable but not amazing versions for a very long time.
Mhm.
And then the decision to just like bite the bullet and throw a whole new system onto the game, which is
Oh,
built,
wow.
which is building. So it
Your
used
player
to just
board.
be you buy stuff and you sell it for points,
Right.
and it became you buy stuff and sell it for money, which helps you
Money.
buy cards, which become points.
Interesting.
And
Yeah.
yeah, that makes me almost gag saying
Sure,
I
sure.
like, oh, I threw another system on to to solve a design problem. But I did there, And I think that's what that particular game kind of needed. It needed just a bit
And
more
then
of a
is that a
world.
change is that happening in conversation with Mojito, or you do that before you even talk to the publisher?
So that game was with a few different publishers, and it
Yeah,
happened. Yeah, the conversation happened with one publisher where they were like, pretty much, they were like, "We like the game, but it
yeah,
feels like something's missing." Like just quite vague feedback of like, "Huh," and that's how I felt too. It's like, I like this, but something's missing. Do we know
yeah.
what that is? No, but I then kind of got the game back and spent a pretty concerted time trying to go like, what's missing? Like, what could it be?
Mhm.
Could it be this? Could it be that? And I tried a
Sure.
bunch of different things. But yeah, those experiences are a bit less and less as time goes by because I, you know, I'm much more. I want to get excited about. I find more likely what happens now is pruning early, getting
Mhm.
super excited early, and then having a crystal clear like design brief for something and just going all in on
Sure.
that. Whereas
Yeah, I think
earlier
that's so
and
important to know what is the game. What is the thing I'm trying to make? Yeah.
yeah, and earlier on, I think almost the opposite's true. It's like don't go hunting for 3 years for your perfect concept. Just pick a concept
Right.
you like and take it to
Yeah.
completion. Like that's
Yeah,
how
yeah.
you need to start, and that's how you learn and grow.
Awesome. Well, a lot of your games, I would say a lot of people have said about your games that they sort of hone in on one mechanism and they sort of distill it down to its essence and exploit as much as they can from its elegance. And this is very much the case of like Sushi Go, or you might say it's true about Summer Camp, or a lot of other games. That they're focused on one mechanism. And my question is, there's a couple mechanisms that you have not used to date. There's probably lots of them, and so I'm curious if you've dabbled in them or if any of them are in the works. And the three that I just have thought of is like trick taking games, which are very hot, card shedding, climbing style games, and then auction games. I don't think you have any
Mhm,
uh, bidding games that
mm,
I can think of. Yeah.
mm. So, I love bidding games, I love auction games, um, but I just can't beat for sale and high society
Mm,
and like, I'm like,
right. Right.
I've almost kind of got, like, the genre is perfected in some weird way, but,
Mm,
um,
sure.
so I haven't had much of a bug to do that, although I do I'm working on a little filler that has a Dutch auction, and I
Okay.
think that's a really underused idea, and I think that it's also like this interesting type of auction that holds your hand a little bit in that you don't need to come up with what the value you might bid would be. It's kind of presented to you, and you go, well, yes or no to this
Yeah.
value. Um, but I love auction games. Trick taking, I never grew up like enjoying trick like my family and friends
Yeah.
played trick taking like at the kind of like national. Well, maybe it's
Mhm.
not even national, but in New South Wales, in Australia, we play
Yeah,
500.
yeah.
Like that's our trick taking
Okay.
game, and um, it never clicked with me as a kid. Even though I think it's like a great trick taking game, it
Mhm.
never clicked with me as a kid, and so I've just never had it in my like DNA. And I've been thinking about it a lot recently because so many are coming out and so many cool things are being done with trick taking. It's like, why don't I have the bug for this? And
Right.
I think the reason is, I don't know what this, you can psychoanalyze me, but I think the reason is like there's something about trick taking in its like most common form where the rule set like allows cheating or like mistakes. There's,
Mhm.
there's something about the fact that you can play wrong. You
Sure.
can, you
You can
can.
accidentally not follow suit and sort
That's
of
right.
ruin the hand. Right.
That's right. And there's just something, and maybe it's because I did that as a 7-year-old and got really confused and didn't
Yeah.
understand,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that just stuck with me. But there's something about that which is like and that is like so important to trick taking working. Like
Sure,
it's so important, and short suiting yourself is like the light bulb moment in a
sure.
lot of trick taking games, you know. But I think there's something about a rule set allowing you to not
Mhm.
correctly boundarying off everything
Right.
in the way
But
the
what
play
you're describing, I think, sets this up to be perfectly Phil Walker Hardinged because
happens.
there are things that you're identifying that you're going, "Okay, well, what how could I make that better?" Like, "Okay, maybe if I put the suits on the back of the cards," and there's games that do that, now everybody knows whether I can follow suit or not, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
There's gotta be something in there
yeah,
with your
yeah.
experience that, maybe you can figure out what would make 500 work for you. Of course, like you said, it has to be something you're excited about, and certainly you don't have that personal attachment to something like 500.
Yeah, I think yeah. And like the short answer is so many people doing so many great things with the trick taking. I haven't felt
Right,
the need to
right.
dive in. But like it is an interesting moment to pause and think like maybe it fits into also why a lot of my games are, extra, if you want to say extra handholdy or extra balanced
Mhm.
or extra welcoming,
Mm.
is because like I think I'm very aware of like people having like somewhat traumatic experiences with playing games as kids. Like
Yeah, yeah.
and I think Monopoly is the obvious one that we can all relate to. But like games, people sitting down to play a game as a young person and kind of getting told you're dumb, like
Mhm.
you're stupid, you've made a fool of yourself publicly by not understanding these rules, or you've played so poorly that your brother has destroyed you. Like
Yeah,
these are like core experiences for a lot of people our age and older. And it's like, um, so when I hear discussions about the trick taking renaissance or the roll and move rehabilitation or
sure. Yeah,
that's
that's a good way to
happening, I'm
put it.
like, yes, of course, 100%. Like all mechanisms can be used in beautiful ways. But I'm kind of thinking like the history a lot of casual gamers have is like a very strong association between playing a game and feeling stupid
Mhm.
publicly. And when you're
Yeah,
a young person, there's not much worse than the public shame of feeling stupid. And
totally.
so maybe something going on for me is trying to like process that through my designs. I mean, I don't have a super strong feeling of that myself, but so many people I play with do. They say to me, like,
Yeah,
I sat down with friends the other night to play test something, and my good friend was like, don't teach me the rules. Let's just start playing. I don't want to be
yeah,
dumb. I don't know if you have this experience with some casual gamers. Like, don't teach me. Let's just
definitely.
play. What's
Right.
going on there? What's going on there is like maybe as a child he was forced to try and be taught something in real time and then like perform to its rules in front of people.
Right.
Like that's actually quite a scary thing to ask a child to do. And so to then say like, no, no, let's just play. I'll figure it out as I go along. There's something less threatening about that because he's not being
Because
tested.
of course I don't know,
Yeah,
right?
of
I've
course I don't know.
protected myself. I You
Yeah,
can't expect me to know. I said, "Let's just play."
yeah, and let's all
And
play not knowing, and let's bumble around and figure it out. Like that's a safer thing for people. So like,
yeah,
um, when it comes to designing games for people who aren't into games, I feel like we've got an incredibly um, it's almost like we're having a discussion about psychology and trauma here, but like
absolutely.
I think
Yeah,
there's a lot there to consider about what a century of like game design that didn't do that, game
right.
design which like um, made assumptions that led to types of games that caused these sorts of experiences,
Sure.
somewhat like correct course, and say like if we want to be a
Yeah,
culture that from a very young age people are playing games, like maybe like what Haber is doing in Germany for the past 30 years is something to like look at and applaud and study, as opposed to like here's another take that card game with
mhm,
gross out art on it
Right.
for you to like antagonize your siblings with.
Yeah.
I think
And I
there's a
think I
conversation
think
there. Yeah.
there's like a lot of advanced gamers, let's say, who've moved through that and obviously are within the hobby because of their comfort and in many cases their comfort with playing badly, especially in a heavy game. So there's those folks that go, I I'm going to step into this game system that is brutal and I can lose on turn one, but that's fine with me. I'm going to come back and learn it. But the people that you and I are talking about, and the much larger market has had the sort of experiences that you've had. I mean, I know exactly what you're talking about with the sort of public shame of poorly understanding the rules as they're taught or performing badly, like just making mistakes that were obvious to everyone else.
Yeah.
That is shameful and embarrassing. And I know plenty of adults that, part of the reason that they don't want to play games, my aunt is this way. I think my wife is this way to some extent. They just don't want, they know that if they have to think, it can come out that they're thinking poorly. And that's embarrassing.
Yeah.
The other place that this shows up is for me, I'm a math teacher. And so this experience we're talking about is
Yeah.
so much the case across math education. Um, and not just, it's not just parents creating gaming experiences for their kids. It's actually parents saying, hey, this was really bad for me and it's about to be bad for you. I had a really hard time in math
Yeah.
and you're about to do it
Yeah.
too. So in my classroom, my number one objective is don't make them like math less. If they
Yeah.
like math less, no matter what else happened, I failed as a teacher. And so in many ways, I have to protect them
Yeah.
from shameful and discouraging experiences. And I think the games you're describing, yourself designing in the games that I'm doing at Gamehead are protecting gaming tables from humiliation while also providing a space for strategic play inside of this sort of, you know, confined, constrained, safe play space. And I think that's really important and what I admire about your designs.
Thank you. And look, that math test day, like,
Yeah.
is there like you say those words to most adults and they feel
Yeah.
nervous. Like it's a
Yeah.
math test day. It is the day
Right.
in which my ability to recall, my ability to understand concepts, which I don't know why I need to understand them, is being put on display. And if it's like a quiz, like I had classes where we would do a weekly quiz and
Yeah.
the teacher would go around the table and you have to read out your score and he'd write them in a
Hmm.
book. So you're publicly
Yeah.
like saying your score
Yeah.
in front of your friends. And like if we can relate to that feeling of, social pressure and anxiety, like that's what gaming is for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And that's horrible. Like that's very sad to me that that's their
Right. Yeah.
experience
Yeah.
of
Exactly.
playing a game. And and I don't know if you are aware of this, but at least in my algorithm, I'm seeing a lot of memes coming from like non-board gaming spaces that
Hmm.
are you go over to your friend's house and they force you to play a game and it's
Right.
incredibly complicated. Like have you seen
Right.
these memes just seem to be everywhere. Like everyone's making
Of
fun of.
course.
I go over for a dinner party and they pull out some game and it takes 40 minutes to explain it and I feel incredibly pressured and like you just ruined my night.
Right.
Like if that has entered the meme space, um, I guess I would say like let's just pause and just think about the best ways our hobby can interact with complete non-gamers. Um,
Yeah.
and one thing I think we're hearing is like, don't make the first game you teach me something that
Right.
takes 40 minutes to explain because you are
Right.
actually, it's not only I don't like it, it's actually like triggering things in me that are really unpleasant,
Hmm.
and potentially turning me off this hobby you're trying to ingratiate me into. Um,
Yeah. I just saw a clip of Don Cheadle talking and other people talking about acting. I have an acting background. My parents were both theater people, and saying that sort of like what acting forces you to do is come into a communal space where you're experience isn't the only one that matters. It's not always your turn to talk. You are working with other people towards a shared goal. It forces you to listen and have all of these different communal objectives. And games can do that too, and really much the same way that you're talking about. Obviously, the magic circle of having shared rules and it taking your turn, it all can enhance that, and I think make communities better. But I think part of the issue, part of like why when friends go to the dinner party or whatever at their friend's house and they don't want to sit down and do the party game now is they're sort of habitualized, socialized, conditioned to resist communal sort of moments. They want to hold on to their autonomy and individuality and be
Mm.
able to have the conversation in the way that they want and step into uh, you know, maybe sometimes talking over somebody or something. And it that restraint, I think, is challenging in our modern culture, maybe
Mm.
sometimes. You know?
Yeah, and it's interesting you raise party games because they can be equally threatening as a heavy
Yeah,
euro for that reason. It's like, oh, you're asking me to participate in a type of thing
yeah,
that I actually don't have any experience really with. Like, if you don't do improv every Friday night, like where
right,
else are
exactly.
you? Where else
Yeah,
are you deciding to get around with six people and like communally build a fun
yeah.
kind of party game experience? It doesn't happen. So I think that's
And
the
I
other
have to
side.
try to be funny in a competitive way. This
Yeah,
seems
yeah,
not fun.
yeah.
Right, right.
It's very threatening.
Yeah.
So look, I definitely hope nothing I've said sounds like I'm against heavier games and people
No,
spruiking heavy games to their friends. It's not that at all. It's really just understanding that even though we love our hobby and we have bought into so much that is taken for granted in our hobby about social spaces, and especially like losing well is something like I don't care if I lose in front of people, that's fine. Like it's a good
sure.
example of something we've bought into. Or we're going to play times up, I'll look a bit silly. I've bought into that too. I'm fine with that. Um,
Hmm.
it's recognizing that that's a big jump for people to step into often if they're not gamers, and if they don't want to play games, if people don't like games, that's fine. But let's not make the reason they bounced
Sure.
off games
Yeah,
because we didn't usher them in to that circle
that's right.
in a kind
Yeah.
of kind way. Yeah.
Cool. Well, we're getting towards a good sort of stopping space, but I do have maybe one more question. Of course, if there's anything that you want to plug or talk about, you have all the freedom in the world for that. But you talked a little bit about sort of the many ideas that you have and sort of call and so forth. And I'm sure, you have many unfinished designs. How many games would you say you're actively working on right now?
Well, let me pull up my Trello.
Mm,
I
I had a Trello at one point.
I I got some advice from a friend a few years ago to start using Trello to organize my
Yeah.
designs, and I was resistant, but it has helped a lot. I would say, looking at my Trello, I I have four things. No, 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 six things that are in develop, like actually with publishers in
With a
development.
publisher, yeah.
I have approximately another six that I am like actively working on that I think are
Mhm,
probably going to get finished and pitched at some point.
mhm.
And then my like ideas board, which is like that next level down of like I'm playing around with it, I'm trying to figure it out. There's like maybe
Yep,
20 15 or
20
20.
games. Wow, excellent.
But all at different
And
levels
I'm
of
sure I'm
development.
sure that you'll pitch many of them to me, and I'll sign many of them, and that's exciting. But you sort of poked at this thing that I think is true and is often said, which is that ideas really are not much, maybe they're even nothing, and that execution is kind of everything for game design. So, are there any unfinished ideas, um, number 1 that you wanna just tell us about? Maybe it's something that you know is being left behind, but maybe somebody else can figure out how to make it cool. And number 2 is is there something in the works that you think will get there, but you want to just tell us about anyway? And maybe somebody will finish the execution in some marvelous way.
Well, for the first thing you said, of things I put aside, again, I also have like a Trello category for this because
Hmm.
I find it helpful to sort of say of certain things, no, done, like
Yeah.
in the no bucket. But like
Yeah.
it's a no bucket where it's like I actually took it pretty close to some level of
Hmm.
completion. So like you never know what looking at it again might do. Let me have a
Sure.
quick look. Yeah, okay. So there's a few interesting things, but one that I thought was like really going to make it was
Hmm.
um a deck build, like a deck upgrading game
Right.
where like the thing I wanted to play around with deck building was like your deck always being the same size and you're just upgrading the
Hmm.
cards in that deck. And I know different games have experimented with this in different ways, and card crafting is one way it's been done. Um, but I had this system where every card in your hand is like a character, and on your turn, you basically play a card from your hand and do its action, and then upgrade a card from your hand. So every turn you have to upgrade something and you have to play something. And so the little system was really cool in that it's like, oh, I don't need to get money to upgrade. I don't need to like build resources to upgrade it. You just get to upgrade something every turn. So like what will I
Hmm.
upgrade? And the game sort of became about these different paths of which parts of my deck am I upgrading, which ones am I playing, when do I stop upgrading and start playing that card, etc.
And how
And
are you doing that physically? How are you going about doing the upgrading?
so there was a I went and bought a um, business card display rack, which was
Okay.
like a
So it was
uh,
a huge display of cards that you could swap into your deck.
yeah. But the rack thing, I realized like the fiddliness of like doing that was actually picking cards up off the table. Like
Hmm.
as a
Okay.
designer, like I've heard Emerson. Oh no, was it Emerson? Yeah, Emerson Matsuchi has said. I've heard. I've never spoken to him, but he's a great designer. But I've heard through multiple people that he has a maxim, which is like you want your players to touch components physically, like manipulate components as little as possible. Because,
Mm,
like, I mean,
interesting.
short of a miniatures game or something where that's kind of the point, like picking
Right.
up stuff and like fiddling around with stuff
Right. Right.
is actually kind of annoying. Like, you want to just be playing. Um,
Yeah.
and I sort of realized that having just a vertical rack made putting like here's my level one, I put it in the rack. My level two is right above
Sure.
it in the rack. I pick it up. It's that was like a big little physical hook that helped. Anyway, the game failed,
Yeah.
and
Didn't get there.
the reason it failed is pretty common for me, which is like I have this system which works, but what are we doing? Like, what is that
Right.
system in aid of? Like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if it
Yeah.
always just boils down to buying victory point cards
Right.
or some version of buying victory point cards, that's often not enough. And then you go like, okay, well, let's try different things we could be doing with this system. But then you're kind of retconning, and it's just
Yeah.
one of those games where the system didn't grow up naturally with a reason to be using it. And so it just
Hmm.
never grew into anything. Um,
That's a great story. And of course, my mind is sort of thinking about how this can be achieved differently or what it might be. But I think the thing you just said is really important, which is like, uh, mechanisms, mechanical concepts in design can be really cool, and many of my designs have come from that. But the place where they take off is when they have a thematic setting that is connected to it. So it's never like, oh, I'm gonna make a tile placement game, and I don't know, it's you're doing tile stuff for whatever. Once I knew Honey Buzz was about bees, it told me so much more about what the game needed to be like and how things were going to work, etc. And the same, it's similar to what you said, really about Imhotep. But if a game just exists as a mechanical system, it doesn't tend to find a really clear reason to exist. A game has to make sense for what it is. And sometimes these games, and I have the same sort of complaint about modern heavy games, is that they're all of these systems tied to each other, but they don't feel like they're meant to exist in the space that they are, you know? But I'm excited about that one. And I'm sure that some of our listeners will grab that and they'll make the best possible version of it that they
Go for
can.
it.
You got one in development that you're gonna tease for us?
Let's have a look in my Trello. Um, um, yeah. Mm, what's a good one to talk about? Yeah, okay. This one sort of fits into the same category in that
Yeah,
I have a mechanical hook that doesn't do anything good.
sure.
And it's a worker placement game. It's a worker placement game where you are adding to and building your workers. You have three workers, and over the course of the game, you're like leveling up your worker basically. But the way this is done is by tile placement and literally like building a worker that
Mhm,
has extra arms and can reach further on the board and can repel other workers and do different stuff.
mhm,
And it's a bit of a heavier game for me. Um,
sure,
and I really got excited about this idea of like, yeah, what if you just have three workers and it's a pretty simple work placement game and you're just placing workers out on the board, but you're like, building a robot or building a spaceship or your workers are these things which are organic in themselves and you're growing them and building them. And it sounds really cool. And when I tell other people
sure.
about it and designers about it, they're like, "Oh wow, yeah, like let's chat about it. Let's workshop it. Let's think about it." But it doesn't go anywhere
Mm.
because, like, again, it's like, what the heck are we doing?
What are we doing with
Like,
them?
yeah, like, what are the workers like? And it's an interesting thing. It's like where the game is often not where you think it is. and
Right.
and like a cool system to make your workers cool robots that do different things sounds like so fun when you say it out loud,
Yeah,
but it's like
yeah,
that's
yeah,
not actually fun. What's fun is like employing those workers you have designed to make killer moves on the board that like make you feel really like I made a great move and I made this cool thing
yeah.
happen in the game space. um but it's so easy to design as a designer to think the game's like, oh, it's over here, it's
Mhm.
in the thing over here, but it's actually not. Like that's a hook or a gimmick or whatever you want to call it. But
Right.
actually, I don't have a game yet. I don't actually have a game.
Yeah,
so
that's true, and often
yeah,
the hooks
yeah,
are the hooks may be the things that sell the game or get someone to think twice about the game, but they may not be the thing that playing the game is about, and that's sort of the case with Misfit Heroes and a lot of other things where, the cool thing, the novel thing is not what the game ends up being, but without it, if that was just a standard deck of a bunch of wonky cards, let's just say it was a deck of 15,000 cards that included
yeah,
all of these different combinations, uh, it could be the same game, but it wouldn't feel anything like that. And so
yeah, yeah.
the
And
gimmick
Misfit
is
Heroes
not the game.
is a great example of this because like once I knew I was doing this card crafty thing, I was I remember saying to myself like, this game has to be good without that. Like I have to
Right.
design a tableau building game that's inherently enjoyable to me, and then I will explore how there's 1,500 of them.
Yeah. That's a
Um,
great point.
and that's the thing I think we can so easily, even as like seasoned designers, get wrong. It's like, okay, I've got this cool idea. That's actually not the game. Like, just like put that
Yeah.
on the back burner. Like, what's
Right.
the game? Design the game.
Key
Make the game fun.
Keyforge isn't just random decks. It's an
Yeah, exactly.
amazing core system.
Exactly. And Keyforge would be great if you just handed me. Well, it is like the whole point is you can play with any one deck.
Right. That's right. Exactly.
Um, so anyway, like it's obvious and simple in many ways, but it's like the constant. It was with like the same lesson I was trying to figure out with Imhotep is still what I'm trying to figure out. Is like where's the where is the game itself
Yeah.
around this scaffolding I've created and these ideas and gimmicks and mechanisms? Like, where is the game? That's the game. And once that is focused on and given care and attention, like the rest will fall into place usually. But
Very
that's way
cool.
harder than it sounds.
That's right. Well, Phil, thank you so much for joining me today. I learned a lot, especially about the timeline of your designs. Really interesting stuff. Hopefully, I'll have you back someday for another one. But we'll wrap it up here. Um, Coming up, more great episodes. I think I'm going to go in and record another episode. It's sort of like design lessons we can learn by studying your games, as well as sort of the lessons of balance that we started to talk about. Feel free. Well, thanks always to our patrons. You support the show. You make this thing work. We love you. If you'd like to support the show, go to patreon.com/decision space. You can join us on Discord. Our videos go live on YouTube as well. And thank you always to Hembry for our intro outro song, Reach Out. Bye bye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Awesome. So thank you, Phil, so much.
No worries.
So here's the thing. I'm still recording, but sort of actually I think I have to do this.